Welcome back to the House Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee. And we are going to be hearing some bill introductions that are in our liquor and lottery jurisdiction today. And Representative Donahue's here with us to talk about H7. So please give us your introduction and sales pitch.
Thank you, Representative Ann Donahue. And particularly for new members, I want to start with a little nugget of what a last day of the session is like, because my bill that I'm proposing is actually it's basically a tiny amendment to a bill that we passed on the very last day of the session. So I brought a prop. These are the list of actions taken, votes taken on Bill H 730 last year on the last 2 days of the session. That's how many actions were taken between the House and the Senate. And on those same 2 days, on the May 11th, 21 bills were passed, and on May 12th, 13 bills were passed. This little H 730, which was basically a lot of cleanup and so forth to liquor and lottery, and was not in this committee because jurisdictions have changed. Otherwise, you'd immediately know all about it. But in it, it had one little piece that I caught and was immediately concerned about, and that was a definition. And it was a definition for something that colloquially we all know as hard cider, except that it used the word cider rather than hard cider to refer to the apple-based drink that has alcohol. And if you are John or Jane Q, layperson, and you go to the store and you're getting stuff for your kids, you know you don't want hard cider, you get the cider. If you're a recovering alcoholic and you know you don't want an alcoholic-based beverage, you want to pick up some apple cider, you're going to pick up the cider because you know you don't want hard cider. But unfortunately, in that bill on that last day, it gave the definition for what we would call hard cider. It named it cider. And I got up on the floor and raised this as a concern, but also said, I am not going to try to gum up the works on the last day of the session by saying, we got to go draft an amendment. We got to bring in 5 more votes to get this all through. But I will bring a bill first thing next session if I return to change the word cider to hard cider so that everybody knows what we're talking about. And that's the bill.
And I believe my response on the floor was, good catch. How did we miss that?
I seem to remember Representative Byron being the reporter. That was the miscellaneous liquor and lottery bill last year.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going back in time.
Pieces. This was a portion that was put in over in the
Could this be a simple little bill?
I didn't want to use that term. Because that always totally, as all folks know, that totally jinxes a bill if you dare call it a simple bill, but.
Yes. Representative Donahue, is there any sort of industry, did you in your research around this issue or coming up, was this specifically about the kind of colloquial understanding of cider versus hard cider? Or are there any sort of terms of art that we need to be sort of focused on if we take this up or we include it in our one of our other liquor and lottery bills?
Well, I have to confess that having not known until the day we opened the session, long after I put in the bill for drafting, that this would not be coming to the committee leadership and so forth that passed H 730 and that would know the answer to all that, but rather coming to a committee that's newly addressing liquor and lottery. I don't know the answer. I don't believe that there is anything that would be pushed back. My own personal preference is, don't put it in some bill that might not move or has its own long path. Just whip it through.
Well, maybe we won't do that. I haven't. Here's what I had told Representative Byron, just so that I remember this being a thing where everybody did say, nice catch. And I think that we'll find the most efficient way to get it through. I think, it's important to be clear in the statutes that we write. And, unless we find some problem with it in some testimony, I'm not even sure who we would have testify on it, but maybe we should bring in a couple of people from the industry who produced hard cider and see.
Senator Westman was actually the primary leader on this. It was, this language was added when it went over to the Senate from us. So,
Okay.
yeah. But as far as this, there's nothing to change the actual substance of the definition of how it's identified as a product in statute. We're just adding hard to the definition for clarity.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and we're really just changing the header.
Okay.
And it-
Right, I think
and it
that-
has
yeah.
no application to how like branding and marketing in the public occurs. It's really just a statutory definition.
Yeah, that would be the term of art stuff is how you did that definition and, yeah.
And this does
Changing.
nothing to impact that. It's just the header to the subcontracts.
Representative Waters Evans.
If we left this as is, does that mean that I could not go to a restaurant and order a 32-ounce glass of apple cider? Hard kind, like, does it make it against the law to do something?
Oh, no, it doesn't change the law in any way.
I'm not saying changing it, but I'm saying right now, as it says, it has to be offered in glasses that contain not more than 12 ounces, with not more than 60 ounces served to any patron at one event. Does that, like, does this without the word hard mean that I can't drink a gallon of apple cider
No.
at like a party and then feel?
Well, at a party, you'd be serving.
Or I mean, like a festival, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just a question for clarity's sake. Is it?
No, it changes nothing to the pour sizes or anything like that as defined. It's all we're really doing is we're just changing it from cider to hard cider at the header. It would not change anything.
Right, no, my question was, does just using the word cider without the word hard in front of it mean that it applies to any kind of cider?
Well, what we're doing is clarifying so there is no confusion. This is speaks specifically to alcoholic beverages.
This.
Right.
Even
Yeah,
as
we
cider.
changed it.
So like you can try and sell that, but I don't think anybody would buy it.
Because it talks about ABA.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like the ABA.
I was just curious.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like you could try pitching that as like a workaround, but I don't think compliance with the DLL would bite.
Is what you're talking about sports drinking and would we bet on it?
Oh, wow.
Let's,
Whether or not I
If you
can finish
don't wanna
a gallon of
promote it.
apple cider?
As long as you're not in college.
all right, so I just want to say, we had some pretty intense testimony this morning. I think
Sounds it.
now we're a little bit lighter with the hard cider definitions. We're getting a little loose around the table, so I'm gonna bring things back a little bit. But Representative Donahue, do you have, oh, no, Representative Chase, go ahead.
Is there a reason why you chose the term hard cider instead of alcoholic cider?
Just because that is the lay term of art that I've always been familiar with. I suppose alcoholic cider would make it really clearer, but I don't know if the manufacturers would want to change it to that. I think that might raise more questions. I think people are just really familiar with what hard cider means.
Anything else for Representative Donahue? Well, we had a lot of laughs and it was very fun to have you in on this. So thank you for bringing H7 to us and we'll definitely find a path for it. I think my intention would be to try to include it in something that is definitely going to move, but I don't know, maybe we'll do it separately. I'll talk to you about that offline, Representative Donahue. Thanks.
That's fine. Thank you.
All right. So our next two bills, I believe, are both sponsored by Representative Matthew Byron.
Should I take the hot seat?
If you'd like to, sure.
Just that's the aesthetic.
I'm agnostic.
Elsewhere in statute.
As pertaining to this law. Okay, thank you.
All right. Hello, committee.
Looking at H60.
Yeah, I guess we get started at H60. So this particular change is a request by folks in the industry and the department. And I want to point out right now, I was actually just talking to Representative Boyden about this, is I wanted to clean up the statement of purpose a little bit for clarity. what this really is in regard to is more access to a higher number of essentially farmers markets, permits for manufacturers. So it's kind of like off-site tasting, which is why it falls under the fourth class license, which is a manufacturer's license. I guess we'll start there. So what this does is it proposes to bring it, the current count is 10 fourth class licenses, but they're really like fourth class licenses in a manufacturer for like off-site tastings.
Okay. So if I'm understanding you right, the ellipses, it's saying there's fourth class license holders.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would be able to get an additional 10 fourth class licenses, but it's specifically for offsite?
Yeah, it's for like, they're like tasting, because, you know, like your fourth class manufacturing, you do a lot of they have the tasting rooms and whatnot. So this is essentially like a remote tasting room kind of concept, which primarily happen at farmers markets. And now that our manufacturers are becoming more involved with farmers markets as a point of customer contact, they're finding that 10 is too limiting for them to be able to, you know, because it was kind of the mindset, it was like, you're going to do like, you know, like Bar Hill, for example, would do the Montpelier Farmers Market one a week, 10's fine. That gets you through most of the season. But now they want to start hitting multiple farmers markets in different locations around the area in a week. You might need 2 or 3 for a 1 week period because it's for each location. See what I'm saying?
I think in order to understand this bill better for folks like me who do not have the jurisdictional experience of the liquor and lottery policy.
You tell me if I need to dumb it down.
Yeah, well, no, it's just that I think I would want to understand the time limitations and how often if you're a manufacturer and you apply for one license to appear at one farmer's market, how long is that license good for? That's the kind of questions it brings up for me. I'd love to have the department probably come and talk about.
Well, that's actually a perfect pivot to another bill that's not on the wall yet, which is the special event permits.
Okay.
Different than this, but really similar.
Okay.
So in essence, what this does is take the number from 10 to 20 for manufacturers who have more access to do things like farmers markets. Yes.
Representative Morgan.
So and I think we talked this before, Rep. Byron, but it's 20 events, not 20 licenses per event.
Correct. Be like 20 individual day events. Yes, correct.
I want to make sure.
Yeah.
Punch card.
Punch card.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Representative Hango.
Thank you. So just to clarify further, because I should know the answer to this, this is not one license for all the, for instance, Montpelier farmers markets that happen in a season. So this wouldn't be 20 of those in various locations throughout the state. Each individual farmers market that occurs in Montpelier has to have one license, right?
That is how I understand this to work. Yes.
Okay,
So it's like each
20
instance. Yeah.
20 really isn't that many if 10 would only limit you to the full season in your town where they're holding a farmer's market once a week.
I mean, it's essentially doing like 10 weeks worth of farmers markets, right? Which is like essentially one season. So this would provide the opportunity to maybe do 10 weeks at 2 locations.
Right. That's a perfect example.
Yes.
10 weeks, 2
Took
locations.
me a second to get there, but I think I got to it.
Hango's question got to my confusion before, and now I get it.
You're welcome. It only took me 4 years in the other committee to figure this out.
No, I got it now.
And I'm really good at translating. That's
Translate me well.
I'm really glad both of you came over from the previous. So Representative Chase and then Representative Hoover.
Do you have any background or history on why the license doesn't follow the organization? If the distiller, shouldn't they just have a license for offsite?
That would be a better question for the department.
Okay.
Yes. So, and we can get into sort of like some of that history and why special event permits, because that's another whole thing, exist the way they do. So they really have made it easier to use these over the years. I'm definitely going to say that. But they want to understand when you get a license to sell alcohol, you have a very defined footprint that you operate off of. And once you leave that, they essentially want to know every instance that you leave your primary like brick and mortar space, whether you're like a restaurant with a catering license or a manufacturer doing one of these.
Is there a reason why we have a limit on them? If the purpose is to track them, is there a reason why they're limited to a certain number that you're aware of?
I mean, I think it was just really to try and keep broader consumption and exposure known, I guess. Again, that's like a philosophical question that, I mean, there are some people who have asked me to push this number up to 30. And, you know, I went to 20 on the draft. That's a conversation for the committee to have. Should we have further discussion on this?
Yeah, and that brings up a whole slew of other questions about sort of competition and how many places you can buy different things. So, and those are things that if we take this issue up and take more testimony on it, then we would definitely want to get the whole committee up to speed on how that works, how the department sees it, how the manufacturers see it, and how it impacts the market and some of our other policy goals in terms of controlling. Representative Hooper.
So one manufacturer gets a punch card with 20 punches on it. Can you be in two places at once? Two
Yes.
punches?
And that's sort of the thought on this. It's like if you have like two farmers market within a reasonable drive radius and you want to do a 10 full week farmers market cycle, why can't, you know, they were like, I want to do 2 locations.
Yeah.
But I only have enough punch cards to do 1 for the whole season. I like the punch card analogy, by the way.
Thank you. Is there a circumstance or a location other than a farmer's market that this would apply to?
Yeah, no, I mean, I just use that as,
Example.
it was primarily like with situations like that. And that's kind of where you get into this like in and out with what's a special event, and what's like this sort of like other definition of off-premise license.
Yeah, what's the answer to that?
I would really, I mean, those decisions were policy decisions were made long before I started messing with this portfolio. So I don't even know how to answer that as to why, right?
Okay.
So, but this is really for like offsite in like a sales tasting environment, which are pretty much, you're only going to do that at, you see, like you might be able to sell like bottles because this allows you to sell bottles. You know, when you go to a farmer's market, you can do a taste and buy a Bar Hill. They do that under this. Now, if you went to like a spirits or a beverage festival and you're operating more like a brewer's fest model, that's a special event permit. That is different.
Okay. But you can't think of another thing other than a farmer's market where this would apply?
An indoor farmer's market? Like, no, but seriously, I mean, like if you wanted to go to a craft fair and like set up a table, you'd probably use this license.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
like at Essex, like at like the expo.
Yeah.
With like, you know, when they have like the big craft fairs, if somebody decided they wanted to go set up like, you know, a table for a craft distiller there.
Okay.
More than likely in my mind, this is the vehicle they would use to do so.
All right. Thanks.
Other questions on this one before Rep. Firong moves on to his other bill? All right. I just learned a lot about 4th class licenses. Appreciate that. Now, H78, accolading to repealing the sunset of 7 VSA 230. That is very descriptive. Always
All right.
appreciate that.
Okay, COVID. This is a COVID bill. When the hospitality industry was essentially shut off and then reopened and was heavily dependent on curbside and to go, the legislature allowed 1st and 3rd class licenses, which is 1st class is beer and wine in a restaurant environment, 3rd class is spirits in a restaurant environment, to sell beer, wine, and mixed drinks to go. since they did not have the ability to serve them in their dining room. So that was put into statute, 7 VSA 230, for a 2-year test drive, sunset after 2 years. And it was to see how COVID played out, see how the scenarios played out within the industry and compliance. And now we're creeping up on that 2 years being up. And what this proposes to do is to remove the sunset and leave the ability for it to go alcohol sales to remain in statute. So just to allow what's been happening for roughly 18, 20 months to continue happening.
So this one is way easier to understand. Thank you, Representative Byron, in spite of its title, which just references statute instead of being more descriptive. Always love that.
Tucker and I are going to clean up the statements of purpose a little bit.
No, it's great. I think, so do folks have questions about this? I have a ton, but they're not really relevant for a bill introduction. You know, I want to learn more about kind of the decision that was made. How has it affected our other things? Are there, I've definitely, had the experience of walking out of a restaurant with quite a bit of alcohol. And if I was irresponsible enough to drink that while I was driving, it's pretty significant. So I think, there's some thought that we would want to put into this. It's also been the practice for over a year and a half now, I guess.
There is a report. The DLO was asked to do a report on this. They contacted license holders for a survey. If and when we discuss this further, we can touch on that. We can grab the report for people to review. But to my best recollection in discussions with compliance at DLL, they had no motor vehicle issues or any public intoxication infractions that were a result of this, to the best of my recollection.
Any questions about the proposal here? It's pretty straightforward. We just might want to understand the greater context and look at the report.
You're saying I shouldn't make a motion that we report this week?
I think we hold on. I also have no idea how that vote would go right at the moment.
Maybe a better gauge of the room.
Senator Byron would like us to rush right into that.
No rush.
Great. Well, I think that we're done with that bill introduction unless anybody has anything else for Representative Byron. All right. So we've had a very, very busy morning, and this was kind of fun this afternoon, taking up some bill introductions. We are tomorrow going to be seeing a walkthrough of some proposed committee bill language, which I will hopefully, it's been a busy day. I've had the version of it sitting in my email for a while from Will and Tim. I will try to get that posted so that folks can have it overnight. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that H46 will be up for action tomorrow. So Representative Waters Evans, we should maybe work once we break here and or after floor to just get a floor report ready for you. So I'm happy to help you with that. And I sent you an email template for that.
Great.
Need help with edits on it there?
Pardon me?
Need help with edits.
Oh, I get it. Listen, I'm not all great and powerful. I might need some edits. I appreciate your offer.
You are good.
I'm in the editing sphere, not just like general.
Yeah. So we're up on the floor at 3. Yes.
Are we doing just general discussion right now? or-
Yep. I just was trying to agenda set.
Are we casual or should we be?
We're casual. You can, yeah. So Representative Hooper and then Representative.
Well, now he's being,
Yeah.
like, he's being formal, so.
No.
There we go. I was just gonna ask, when's the next chapter in the sheriff's discussion?
So Andrew, did the state auditor confirm for tomorrow?
2:30.
So we're going to hear a little bit more testimony tomorrow from the state auditor. He's had a couple of different documents that are already up on our website that I'd like him to speak to. The bonuses in Caledonia, and there's generally a proposal from him that we should try to perhaps in a committee bill or in the context maybe of S17, adopt some guardrails on compensation. The Vermont Sheriff's Association, I already think, provides the sheriff's offices with best practices. So we might want to look at what they say, they suggest, and codify that if we can. So I'm kind of trying to tee up that conversation.
Well, the reason I ask is I'm kind of trying to get a feel for like how many objectives we have before us. I know there's the obvious one, the major one, the constitutional one, but are we also trying to check a lot of housekeeping boxes as we go, or how often does this committee do a deep dive on sheriffs?
Never.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
No one's ever done it.
That's basically what I thought. So I think
Yeah.
it seems to me like we've kind of a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I think what I wanted to do with this morning's testimony was lay it all out in all of its ugly, it's a mess, basically, because what we have is an office that, has a long history, and there's by accretion been different practices in different counties. There are people doing great work all over the state. There's also, if the wrong person gets into that office, there have been instances throughout history, but just it seems to be recently that more of them have come to light of pretty significant mismanagement, if not actually embezzlement of finances. And then when you layer on that these use of force incidents and some other inappropriate actions, there's kind of a systemic problem of not having enough oversight checks and balances. But to actually do anything about it for us, other than some of the really small stuff that I think our Senate colleagues are already starting to take testimony on bill language, I wanted to, before, we have other bills that we're working on, kind of tee up the conversation and also have us be aware of what's going on. I wasn't sure before today how many of us had heard from somebody like State's Attorney Lavoie about, what does it mean when, potentially the sheriff's offices start to implode in one county, and what does that mean for the rural communities that depend on them for certain levels of service. So it's a really thorny issue. And I don't have a specific plan, but I wanted this committee to at least have a foundation so that, if we do need to take some really quick action on something, we have a little bit of base of knowledge to start doing our work. So I wanted to prepare us for that. And then the next thing is that we're definitely going to get a bill. Almost certainly going to get a bill from the Senate that takes on what we can do statutorily. And the constitutional amendment, I think, is a bigger question. So that's a lot. Representative Murowicki and then Representative Hooper.
Sure, thank you. Well, thanks for getting a wide array of witnesses, and we heard quite a bit this morning. To your point about what can we do in that case where a situation implodes, Windham County actually went through it 2 sheriffs ago, where we had to put a sheriff on the sidelines. The high bailiff took over, and the legislators, I wasn't here then, but had a big hand in that. And we might want to hear from some people who were there at the time. The last thing I want to say is the last witness we had here, I really feel took some cheap shots at sheriffs all across the state. And I would hope we could have some other sheriffs come in to rebut that. There were some allegations made with a pretty broad brush that I know are not true from my own experience. Like working in child protection, when we'd have to do a welfare check, we'd have police go into an apartment first. And it was often the sheriff, our county sheriffs were right there in their bulletproof vests, because where there's drugs, there's guns. That's the level that we were at. I've seen sheriffs go into burning buildings to help people get out when there was a fire, because they were the first ones on the scene. And to hear these allegations that all they do is traffic patrol, I think was disingenuous and specious in demeaning sheriffs across the state. And I would hope they get a chance to rebut that.
I think that we'll hear from more sheriffs for sure if we're taking out bills. And I do want to say, yes, sheriffs do, as we heard from Sheriff Anderson and from Sheriff Marcoux, from the state's attorney, from the courts. I mean, sheriffs provide a lot of services and do incredible work all across the state. I want to separate out some of the criticisms that folks have about specific sheriffs that have, had a misconduct allegation and those kinds of things from these bigger questions that are about, is this the right structure for the state of Vermont to have for providing certain areas of these law enforcement services? Because there are areas like, look at dispatch is a perfect example. Some sheriffs, they're providing their own dispatch or they're offering dispatch services for other places. Some aren't. Is that the right service for them to be providing? But I do agree with you that, we heard a variety of perspectives. Some were really, I would say, lean on the side of just being like, we're pro sheriff. Mr. Silverman's comments, I think, stem from a place of saying like, why is it set up this way? And, I think your conclusions you're drawing from it are pretty fair. But it was a perspective, especially given that he had to be the high bailiff, that I wanted to hear today. It's not to say that we're endorsing any of the opinions that are expressed by, or all of the opinions that are expressed by the folks that tested.
Welcome to his opinions, but that there wasn't a rebuttal to it, I think left it there. So I know our time was tight, but I just hope that there's an opportunity for a rebuttal to those, because they were serious allegations.
I'll make sure that we give members of the Sheriff's Association that opportunity. Representative Morgan.
Yeah, so I'd just like to piggyback on, you heard my comments to him, but I vehemently disagree with your remarks. I was pretty clear about that. And because I know that I represent 6 towns, but they fall in 2 counties. And I know both of the sheriffs fairly well. I know one fairly well, I know the other one very well. And I know they would take great umbrage with those remarks and would be, they would be too good. They are 2 good sheriffs that if we do take some testimony from them, that would be great folks to come in and do that.
Great. If you could put their best contact information in Andrea's email and CC me on it, that'd be helpful. And then we'll have those in the parking lot for when we
sounds good
take this up again. Representative Hooper, I'm sorry that I missed you in my queue.
Found myself, I echo what my 2 bookends here said. I might repeat some of it, but I questioned several times during the presentation, where are we going with this? A 4-year commitment to change the Constitution or God knows what, because fiddling with it ends you up in court for a long time. I became more infatuated with the division between law enforcement and small business. And I'm entirely sure that they're not performing well in the law enforcement area, and maybe the business thing bears a little more examination. Particularly when we got to the point of the homeless shelter. That caused me to take a step back.
Yeah, and I
don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. So.
I think that the programs and services that each county sheriff's office does are as varied as the different counties, and there isn't any clear definition of sort of these are the things that a sheriff does, and maybe that's part of what we need to provide. Representative Hooper.
I think I recall correctly that Representative Pango referred to articles already being drafted for an impeachment process. Is that
Nope, not me.
what? You didn't?
So
I am totally wrong.
all right, so I want to really like no joke, I get asked by people in this building, by the press, when, because I'm from Franklin County, Representative Hango probably gets asked all the time, what are you guys doing about the fact that you have a sheriff that was elected that's got a criminal charge pending, case against, around certification in Vermont Criminal Justice Council, et cetera, right? And I want us to be really careful about every time the word impeachment comes up, people are like, well, obviously that's the thing to do, because I am really uncertain based on what I've heard to date. And I've had a lot of conversations with ledge counsel and lawyers and historians and stuff about what our options are. I don't know that we could be successful in impeaching given the precedent and what's in the Constitution. It's very unclear. And I don't think it's not a great remedy. I don't know that it actually could solve the problem. And I want to be careful about just what we say here on the record about it, and just even the suggestion that maybe somebody's quote unquote drafting articles. In order to have articles of impeachment drafted, we have to go through a process of setting up having a resolution and a committee being appointed and an investigation happening. And only then would that committee be able to even do articles. So it is not, this is not something, and that's just based on what happened in the 70s. I mean, so.
Where did I get this concept then?
Because I think a lot of people are talking about this. So I want to say a lot of people are.
What did you say this morning?
You hear a rumor enough, it becomes reality.
Yeah, so I want us just to kind of take the temperature down and say, we're not ready to have that conversation yet in
Okay, no, that's
this
fine.
body.
All right.
I just don't want the public expecting us to be able to, for folks who are really worried about a couple of the individual sheriffs that have pretty significant challenges to their credibility and pretty significant misconduct on video, for instance. Our ability to have a quick fix. I know there are a lot of my constituents who want us to do something fast. And what I always tell them is the entire system that we are involved in here is about being deliberative and not moving fast. So we're not the quick fix those, especially this issue. Yes, Representative Pango.
I think you might have heard ledge counsel who were Tim and Tim and Ben said ledge counsel is investigating the process of what an impeachment would look like. I take really detailed notes, so if you ever need to know what was said.
They've been tasked.
Yeah, so they're looking at it, but they have no idea what the process looks like right now, is what I got from them.
But they did not infer they were doing it specifically for
No.
this.
No, they did not infer that at all. They just are looking, for their knowledge, they need to know what it looks like, because none of them were here the last time it was attempted, right? I mean, there was an
Yeah, so
attempted impeachment.
like we had heard this morning, I mean, the last time this even came up was 5 decades ago. We're in really uncharted territory, and I want to make sure that we're not even really talking about something that's not baked, and getting ahead of ourselves, especially when I think the word impeachment gets thrown out, around presidents and that kind of thing is like a panacea. And it's not, I think it's a political process more than it is a legal one. But I think there are many people who expect us, if we were going to go down that road, to hold ourselves to a pretty high standard. And so we want to make sure that we've been thoughtful before we even consider something like that. Representative Cooper.
The thing that's in kind of the back of my head is that the president, so many other officers, there are other means to push them in a direction. But frankly, at this point, I think we're pretty well convinced that impeachment is the only tool we have in the toolbox to do actually make the problem go away.
Yeah, so
everything else is sort of voluntary on the part.
Yeah, it's the only tool we have. Short of what I would hope is that somebody who was incredibly compromised would resign of their own accord if the kinds of issues that we heard from the state's attorney are manifest. But yeah, that is what we heard.
When you gotta put a screw in and the hammer's the only thing you have, you use the hammer.
Thanks for that opinion, Representative Hoover.
Does that work?
You have to hit it very hard, I think, to complete that analogy. Representative Murwicki, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry. It's been quite a day here.
We did a lot.
We did a lot.
What did we even do?
So great. Well, I think that is enough difficult conversation around thorny issues for today. So we'll be on the House floor at 3, and then we'll be back here tomorrow at 9 o'clock to talk about elections.
Just a quick introduction. This is Michael Wright, intern from UVM. You'll see him around for a while. He's doing some good work, and I hope he's learning something. He's a poli-sci major, right?